Good afternoon, everyone. At least afternoon for those on the East Coast. Everyone that is on the West, good morning. Have another exciting live coming today. I get to interview sex therapist Jackie, who's going to talk a lot about purity culture as well as different topics surrounding sex practices. So I'm excited about getting started with this. I'm looking forward to having the opportunity to talk with her and hear her thoughts and opinions. Hey, Justin, good to see you. So she will be hopping on here shortly. I see that she's joined, so I'm going to invite her. Started here soon. Hey,
Okay. Hi, how are you?
good. How are you?
I'm good. There's construction going on in the background, so my bad. I got my headphones in if y'all can hear
I,
it.
I apologize if my dog barks. So it's all
Oh,
good.
there's no apology there.
Thanks for taking the time to talk today.
Yes, no, totally. Thank you for having me and scheduling this with me. I know I'm like slow-mo on the lives game lately, but we're getting back into it. So thank you for getting me back into this.
No apologies needed. It's awesome. How's
Mhm. How's what? I'm sorry.
how's the day been so far?
It's been busy. It's been good old. So I'm not certified yet for sex therapy, but I had another supervision this morning with my supervisor to become a certified sex therapist, which is always awesome. So I've got like 8 left to do or 7 math numbers, whatever. But that's been good. And the new folks are going to be starting therapy soon. So that's always good, getting all the client calls and such as well. How about
That's awesome.
you?
That's awesome. It has been um, a busy day, but a good day. Been a good day. It's a little
Yeah.
warm side for my liking at this point. You know, I don't know where
Mhm.
do you actually. Where do you live?
I'm in Minnesota, so it's like
Oh,
67 today, so that's like prime for us.
yeah,
Like we need
that's right.
that.
So I almost lived in Minnesota for a short time, and I would have loved the winters. Everybody says that they're horrific, but it
They're
seems
so horrific.
Minnesota. Yeah, it seems like people in Minnesota go out and enjoy the weather, right? It doesn't keep
Yeah.
inside. So yeah,
No, it doesn't. You got to embrace it here, that's for sure.
yes. Hey, Andrew, good to see you. So I for those that are going to watch or those that are watching now, for my people that may not know you, I'd love for them to get the opportunity to know you. So would you just take a moment and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm sex therapist Jackie. She, her. Sex therapist is my Instagram handle and my YouTube handle. I've been practicing sex therapy since 2018. Gosh, feels like forever. Um, but essentially, I work a lot with folks in regards of individual work, couples work when it comes to sex, shame, work of the self, because they're all intertwined for me. So Shameless Therapy and Consulting Services is my business. I do sex therapy, coaching, holistic healing, and I do a lot of business coaching for people that are looking to start their own private practice, be it if they're a therapist or if they're like, I've got this great idea for a business. Can I talk to you? And I'm like, hell yeah, boo, you can. I got you. So I do a lot of different things and it's been really fun. I also have my Shameless shop, which is a lot of holistic healing products too for mental health, sexual health, and physical health. So there's been a lot of fun things that I've been able to do year one in business on my own, and I love it.
Okay, so that's impressive. Everything you just reeled off. Okay,
Oh
so
shit. Toot my own horn.
oh, that is awesome. That's awesome. So
Thank you.
you're not busy at all. Is what it sounds.
No, never, never.
So, do you obviously know my audience is a lot of people that are deconstructing their faith, so forth and so on. Obviously, purity culture is a big issue and whatever have you. What is your religious background, if you have one?
So growing up, I actually was raised Catholic, and I was in a very traditional Polish Catholic like household, like Polish American household. So I grew up with a lot of Polish cultural pieces there, but a lot of Catholic faith intertwined within the culture. And honestly, like maybe y'all can tell or maybe not, or maybe you could have guessed it, like I'm not a practicing Catholic anymore. I don't believe it. It's not my jam. Like it's cool if that's for other people, but like you do you, I'm gonna do me because I didn't really believe in a lot of the things that were being said to me. And there was a lot of shameful messages when it came to sex in particular too. And I love that we're going to be talking about purity culture because when I think about it, like, I'm grateful that we have more language when it comes to sex therapy, when it comes to gender, and especially when it comes to religion nowadays, because if I reflect back on it, like I was raised in a purity culture, like mentality and mindset. And that's kind of fucked up when we think about it. We think like, oh, sex and being naked with our bodies is bad, or if I have sex, I'm going to hell or something like that. And that's really not okay. And so I'm just kind of like, when I got these messages throughout my Catholic faith and upbringing growing up, I was like, I'm not buying it. Like, what the fuck? And then they would bring people in. I remember one of the sex ed talks that we got was from this person that came in speaking about their abortion and crying in front of us, and like basically was a scare tactic to shame us from not having sex or masturbating or anything like that. And so personally, like I didn't get a sex education when it came to the church that I was going to or anything like that, let alone the school. I asked my parents questions and things like that, but I definitely looked at porn. Like that's where my sex education came from. So it's like, what does that tell you? That's probably not also that accurate either. So that's the long and short answer of it. So I'm not practicing my faith currently or my spirituality currently. I have a lot of abilities and gifts when it comes to just like feeling energies, calling different things. There's kind of been a spiritual awakening going on too in the last year in the mix of the things like surprise, surprise, working with crystals and the woo woo too and holistic healing, right? So that has been more helpful for me to have flexibility with it and to also have more of like what I believe, which is I believe in karma. I believe in like holistic healing. I believe in like really great things can happen, as long as you believe in them and as long as you're practicing what you preach, like and living with integrity, that's huge for me. And that's what I try to do, as a therapist and as a person. Like I don't ever like asking clients to do things that I wouldn't do myself as well.
Awesome. So, first of all, we're going to dive into that. All that right here. So,
Hmm.
first, you're obviously very successful at what you do. Okay,
Thank you.
different avenues, a lot of different people you work with. Why did you decide to become a sex
My fucked up family. No, just kidding. That's how I became a therapist. But sex therapy. So I actually got into it for gender. So my mom is one of 8 kids. She has 7 brothers. Her parents were Holocaust survivors. Like I said, Polish American, the thick accents and all the talking European and da 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 da, right? So my babcia and jaju, grandma and grandpa, came over from Poland and they were in a work camp over there during the Holocaust. So they survived the Holocaust from being in Poland. And so a lot of their Polish Catholic traditions came with them. Like I grew up doing Polish dance. I know and I can decode the language, but I can't respond. So I have like that gap, which really fucking sucks. It'd be cool. But then my dad's side of the family, he's one of 6 kiddos. He's got 5 sisters and he's the only boy. And then his parents, his dad was a chef in the army. There was really egalitarian, split tasks of the household versus this traditional Polish side and this egalitarian side. And it was just, they didn't really grow up with religion or anything like that. Do on to good people, good things will come to you. Kind of that mentality. Don't be an asshole, right? So growing up, when I have one older brother and I'm the youngest, at a family dinner one time, I remember my mom saying, Jackie, you go do the dishes. And I'm like, why do I have to do them? Why can't Joey go fucking do the dishes for once? I didn't cuss, but like, that's how I felt in my mind. And that's what I really wanted to say. And she said to me, because you're a girl. And
therapist?
so my dad's like eating his bowl of cereal or ice cream, whatever it is. And I just remember the spoon dropping in the bowl. And he's like, no, 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 we're not doing this. Joey, you do the dishes. Jackie, I'm going to take you outside. I'm going to show you how to check and put oil in your car. And so from there were a lot of conversations about gender and a lot of conversations about like how we're not going to reinforce these, you know, like gender-based scripts and norms in our household. And so what my dad really said was like, I want you kids to be well balanced. And I don't want there to be any kind of gendered language when it comes to you do this, you do that because of this or because of that, because you're a girl or a boy or whatever, because there's more than two genders out there, right? So that was a huge thing. So I really got into it for that. And then throughout college, like I was just always curious. I was always reading. I was always learning. I was always asking questions about sex and talking about sex. And my sorority sisters were like, "You should go be a sex therapist." And I was like, Psh, "That's not a thing. Whatever. What's going on? No, 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 no." And then I had to do my own work around my shame messages with that. Why did I think that sex therapy wasn't a thing out there? What did that come from? And that came from my religious background of Catholicism, of like thinking sex is bad and thinking like, no, people don't talk about sex ever. And if you're familiar with Polish culture, it's like we literally have sex, we don't talk about it, or we never come back to it. And there's a lot of really misinformation when it comes to that as well, of like, oh, well, this person's married to them. Like this has happened quite often in the Polish culture and community. And it's really sad. It's like, oh, well, they're married, so then they could have sex. And it's like, no, if the person didn't consent to it, that's technically sexual assault and abuse. And others may say rape, right? So there was a lot of work I had to do on myself when it came to this. And so that's why my business is named Shameless Therapy, because I have to work on that. But shame is something that we always have to continue working on. It's kind of like with Kristen Neff, she talks about self-compassion. Like we're always using that to be able to grow. Shame is the same. We typically try to avoid it and or control it. Let's invite it in. Let's sit with it. You know, we can take it for a moment or a minute and just notice what it's like to be with it in the realm. And then we can put it back in that box and then reopen it when we want to in the future. So that's my long-winded answer to that one too.
Powerful answer. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Way to go, Dad, from Override Coaching. On from
Mm-hmm.
yes, totally. I don't know if I've ever heard a dad say that when I was growing up.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. So many of my clients, as you know, or followers, have suffered through purity culture,
Mm-hmm.
but before it was called purity culture, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It was in the '80s where it's like, hey, you're going to turn burn, you're going to die if you touch a woman here. If you masturbate, your hands are going to get hairy. I mean, just the whole you're gonna go blind. All those kinds of things, right?
Yep.
Uh, so, what are some tips you would give to them, those suffering through purity culture or who have suffered through purity culture, to heal from the negative views towards sex?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, there's so many different things that people can do. And I think one of the biggest things is literally working with that shame and calling out those shameful messages too. Like, shocker, being a therapist and like educating my parents, like, don't use the word should, don't say this, don't say that. Like, of course, this person's defensive and blah, 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 blah. So, like, that's something that we've kind of worked on together within our family unit and system. And it's literally calling out that shame when it happens. And it can be sneaky, it can be covert, it can be overt. And so when it's covert, you're like, holy shit, like, that is so sneaky. Like, how did I miss that right here? So then it's kind of like, okay, be gentle with yourself, be kind, come back to it, think of the response for next time, or go back to that person and talk to them about it. I think one of the most powerful things that we have in this world is our voice. And if we don't use it, then we hold on to those feelings and emotions when it comes to shame, especially with sex and purity culture. And we have to be able to, navigate those conversations in a way that we aren't, using shame blame language. I have a resource and I'd be happy to send it out to people if they want to be able to use it. It's called Shameless Communication Skills, where it breaks down the two. And there's some different types of creative stuff and projects that'll be in the future. They're not ready to be born yet, but they will. And that's one of the biggest things I think is it all starts with language and calling it out. It's really about a balance of educating ourselves, learning, but calling it out consistently. And you don't have to do it in a sassy way, like, and I have my days too where I'm just like, holy fucking shit, that was shameful. Why the fuck are you saying that, right? So it's like, okay, Jackie, reel it in a little bit. How can you say that differently, right? I'm a human too. It happens. And we have to be able to forgive ourselves with that. So I think that's a big one. I think another one is doing mirror work with that. I think, sometimes when it comes to confidence and consistently building up those like key phrases that we might want to say when we call out shame, we have to practice how we play. We have to do it consistently over and over again. Practice makes perfect. No, perfection doesn't exist. So when we even think of that quote, we have to reframe it and use it as practice makes progress. Because a lot of times what I see with clients in purity culture, because I have them too, right, is perfectionism and the struggle with that. So we have to slow down and realize what are the things and the stories that we're telling ourselves here, because that's huge. Our words hold so much weight to it. So we have to be able to check into if we have this like piece of perfectionism that's coming in hot, and we need to be able to slow down and work with it and just say like, this is good enough. Like, I did my best, fuck the rest, right? When it comes to practicing. So some mirror work. Honestly, journaling. I love journaling. I think journaling is such a great way to be able to get our thoughts onto paper and like out of our minds and out of our brains. And then when we journal, clients will laugh at me when I say this. I'm like, I want you to answer these questions about shame. I want you to write out what you want to say and then come back and we'll talk about it in session. So we talk about it in session. Then I'm like, okay, part 2. I want you to go back, look at yourself in the mirror. I want you to practice this. And then they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll do it. And then they do it. And then they're like, oh, I see where you're coming from, because this is like my cheat sheet for the future. And I'm like, yes, you got it. Like, now you can go back and use this over and over again. Weird. Like, we're not just doing this to do it in therapy. We're doing it to do this in life. So there's that piece. And honestly, last piece, of course, I'm biased. Seek counseling or therapy. It's okay to be able to work on shame with other people. I think it's harder to do this work on your own than it is to have that support, because sometimes we just need to be able to tell our stories and have somebody validate that, listen to that, and just hold space for that. And that's like scratching the surface of shame, is just even talking about it. And of course, with purity culture, and of course, with a lot of things in sex therapy, there's just so much shame embedded into it. People think, oh, I'm coming to see you for desire discrepancies because I'm in a marriage or something and we haven't had sex in forever. But then what's underneath that is, oh, my partner doesn't want to have sex with me because I initiate and then I get turned down. And then there's some message underneath there of shame of like, oh, I've been rejected by the church for my sexuality. I've been rejected by my family. I've been rejected by my friends. And then there's other messages underneath that we have to work with when it comes to shame. So it's okay to seek sex therapy for shame. It's okay to seek therapy in general. Like, there's no shame on the therapy game. And that's what I'm trying to reiterate over and over and over again. Those are some tips. And I feel like it really has to be a collaborative approach with someone that can do this work and be, in that kind of mindset of like, I know what shame is. I've researched it, maybe have experienced it, maybe have really worked a lot with clients in this. And this is an area that I do great work with when helping.
Wow. Okay. Absolutely. I agree with everything you said. I totally board with, hey, if someone's struggling with shame or anything else, go see a therapist. Right? I think 40, if not all of my are in therapy as well, right? Of that, I think that's out. So, but it's for a male, I don't know, but for a male, it's obviously embarrassing, I think, to go and see a therapist, right? I mean, because of what we're taught, and they attach to that. So, when people are sitting in front of you, you've got a couple in your office. How do you start? Like, how do you teach them to love their bodies and not see this act as sinful?
Yeah. And this may be like a repeat tape here. So one of the biggest things that I think is so important, a lot of people will say, how do I love my body? Well, that's going to be a lot of work. How do you feel about your body currently? Are there things you like about your body? Do you hate your body? Because people will say, I hate my body. And that's a really scary place to be. Well, then where did those messages come from? What's coming up for you? Most often than not, it is shame. So it's kind of like a isosceles triangle, right? So when people ask me, how do I learn how to love my body? Because I want to get up here. I want to be at the top, right? And I want to love myself. I want to love my body. I want to feel sexy as fuck, confident as fuck, whatever. And we don't work with shame first. It's like basically putting it on point and then it falls over. So that's one of the biggest things. Like, people, of course, want to come to therapy and build confidence. But if there's some sort of inner critic or another person's voice or perfectionistic tendency or personality that is coming up in those sessions, it's going to be so hard to go from here to here and like here is the goal. Like, we want you to be more confident, but we also want you to be able to just take time and work with that shame prior to just skipping ahead and like passing go and skipping ahead and boom, you're done with the game. And Monopoly, right? Like, it takes time to actually get through Monopoly, right? Hours. Same when it comes to building that sexual confidence and that shame too. So when a couple is coming in session with me, I've done this before. I've asked them, I think it's really great. I'll say this to them like this, like, I think it's really great that you want to be more comfortable and confident in your body. And both of you want to be that. So then your partner gets that energy too, because that's the number one trait that we look for, that we find sexy and attractive in people, is confidence. And so when somebody isn't confident, then our partners like get that signal and they're like, oh, well, they may not be attracted to me then, or they may not like me then, because they're showing up differently. And so I'll say, I think this is great work that you want to be able to do this. And I want to know, are there any messages about your body that you don't like, or any unfinished business from the past or even present now with how you talk to your body, you talk to yourself, that you need to work on first? And that's where we start. Because more often than not, there is. And sometimes there can be a lot of body shaming when it comes to religious trauma, when it comes to society, and when it comes to sex in general, like having one kind of body type. And I think that makes it really challenging too for people, because then they feel like they have to fall into this specific norm, and that other people won't think it's sexy if like you have a big ass, or other people won't think it's sexy if you have smaller breasts, or other people won't think it's sexy if you have a lot of body hair, when a lot of people do actually think that's beautiful. Or even questioning too, like a lot of folks, if they go through puberty, growth spurts, different things, or even pregnancy throughout life too, like I've got stretch marks now or whatever, or I went through a weight loss adventure, right? People get nervous about these different things with bodies, and even through that there can be shamings on all end of the continuum. Like me personally, I'm 5'2.5". I know you can't tell in my chair, and I am about 140. I used to weigh 195. And
Mm.
throughout that process of me losing weight, I got told to eat cheeseburgers at certain times. I got told to stop losing weight. I got told, don't be obsessive about this. I got told, you look so great, you look so good, you look this, you look that, you are more confident. And so even that can be really challenging too, of like, well, how do we make sure we aren't body shaming people and telling people mixed messages and signals about bodies? And it's also important for like me in those examples, say like, hey, that's uncalled for. How about we don't comment on my body when we meet up, even if it's something nice? Right now, I'm not comfortable with that. That's my boundary that I'm setting with you. And yes, you didn't know that, but now this is me reiterating it. Please don't do that again. Right. So it's also working with calling that out too, if we don't like those comments. And if couples are saying, well, my parent told me I was fat growing up, or something like that. Okay, well, is there some work that we can do with that there? Have you ever talked to your parent about that? Are they still alive? Are they in your life? And if they aren't, then we may have to do some things on figuring out, what do you truly need to heal with that? Because I could give you all the different ideas and answers and stuff, and they may not even be helpful in those moments. So it's also some reparative work too, from maybe that body shaming that people have experienced over time. And then also navigating, how do I communicate my boundaries when it comes to my body, and whether or not people can actually comment on it. And we even do this at a young age with kiddos. We comment on appearance, like, oh my gosh, you're so cute. Oh my God, you're so little. Oh my gosh, you're so pretty. Oh my God, adorable. And it's like, how about we don't? When was the last time we gave a compliment that wasn't based on someone's looks when it comes to their bodies? So that's another thing that we need to be mindful of too.
Man, okay, yeah, so much in there, right? So
Yes.
I
Mm-hmm.
okay, love everything you just said. Uh, I find, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a professional. This is personal experience. I find that uh, men have a very difficult time coming forward with body image, at least
Yeah.
coming in evangelical purity culture. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
know how harsh it is on women, and it's extremely harsh towards women. What
Mm-hmm.
I experienced in it was, I was taught, you have sex, you go to hell. You're used up and not good for your spouse. Um, if you masturbate, that is a terrible sin. Um, Not to trust your body or your feelings or your instincts. And I think that's the part of it, that when you're in that culture long enough, your brain kind of rewires. So your automatic get go is, okay, this is wrong. I don't look the way I should look, or I feel this way, and I have desires, or all those. That when I actually got married, and I was one of those that saved myself from marriage, and my wife was the same way. I married at 27. I thought Jesus was going to come back before I actually had, and all my friends
Hmm.
did the same thing, right? Um,
Hmm.
um, it was because of the internal mental work that the church had done. I couldn't turn it off.
Yeah.
They always make it seem like, okay, when you're doing this or when you get married, everything's going to be rosy. But
Mm-hmm.
it was the exact opposite for me, and the exact opposite, I think, for my wife as well. It was like, okay, this is good. You know,
Hmm.
think that I'm not sinning by doing this. So
Hmm.
say, hey, it takes work, it takes time. It can take sometimes people imagine 6 months, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 years. It just depends. I
Hmm.
really hear what you're saying, and really agree with everything you just said. Uh, so thank you for sharing that. I appreciate
Hmm. Yeah.
it.
And thank you for sharing that too. And with the piece about like men's bodies, because of course, like women get it, right? Men get it too. And we forget about that. And we think, well, what about men? And, women in all genders, like we're all just as bad in saying, like, oh my God, this person has to have like a six pack, or they need to have biceps, or they need to have this kind of body type. And I've seen that a lot in my practice with folks saying, like, just being on social media and stuff and seeing all these different things, and then the apps that people can use to Photoshop their bodies. And then they wonder why, like, I don't look like this, or why does my body, for some people too, it's like, genetics are different. And I wish that was something that was taught in schools. I mean, I got that from one of my health teachers growing up, thank goodness, but not everybody does. And I think when people say, like, well, your body, it may just be harder to put on muscle, and, maybe you're just never going to be that six pack person, and that's okay. Like, no body type is better over like one or the other, but it's like, how do we have those conversations where it's also inclusive of men, because men also get sexualized too. And that's not fair either. And then it feels even worse, like, to be sexualized. Like, I get my brunt of it with like being on Instagram and all these different things, right? And it does feel like shit when you get sexualized, right? And like for me, I laugh at it now because I'm at that point of like, I'm practically like numb to it. I just have to laugh, and just be like, oh, this is what happened this week, everyone. But men have not been given that permission that I have been given to say like those emotions. Maybe not all of them, right? Because society, when society raises men, it's like, don't show your emotions, like be a tough one, be a tough boy, be a strong kiddo, right? Versus if it's like a little girl or something like that, it's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? It's okay to cry, and then we coddle and we hold them, right? Well, imagine if we did that for young men or young boys and said, like, hey, it's okay to cry. Like, it's okay to just be sad in this moment here and to experience this emotion. It's okay to be like feeling disgusted that somebody thinks your body, like maybe they are sexualizing you in a certain type of way. And it's okay to feel that nastiness of it. And then when you're talking to about the church and the programming of it, like in the brain, it's literally like wired in a certain way because there's patterns that have been happening. And then it's like, okay, how the fuck do I unwire all these patterns? Like, it's unlearning what you learn. And absolutely, that does take time. And I think with sex therapy, some people are like, it's the cosmetic of therapy. Like, I can come in for 6 months. And I'm like, well, A, have you ever had sex therapy before? And B, have you ever had therapy before? And if the person says no to both of those, 2 to 3 years sometimes minimum. Like, sex therapy is not like the the dessert plate at the restaurant where you get your nice little piece of cake and then you're out. No, like it's the appetizer, the main course, the water coming out, the meal and the dessert. It's like it takes time to do that and prepare that work and continue that work. So sometimes there may be folks with 6 months if they have had that, therapy work prior to and beforehand. And for other folks, it's like, yeah, this is going to take some time because think of the patterns like
Yeah.
over the years, like
Hmm.
took time to have those be embedded into our brains. It's going to take time to unlearn those and catch ourselves when that happens too.
Very true. So let me ask you this question. You have recommendations on how to explore different sex practices after being told they were bad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so exploring different sex practices after being told they were bad. So there's a lot of things with that one. I think a part of it is being able to ask yourself, is this truly bad for me though? Or was this someone else's values? What are my values around my body? What are my values around sex? What are my values in life? Like, I think that's just huge to go over in those moments. And, do you truly believe that you are bad or sex is bad or your body is bad? Or is that something that doesn't fit your experience? Because if your body, you mentioned like listening to your body earlier, right? If your body is giving you urges and it's like, holy shit, I'm turned on, I need to go masturbate after this live, right? Is that a bad thing?
Right,
It's
right,
like, it's a part of our human nature, right? Just as if we were to say, oh my God, like I need to go eat some lunch after this live, like I'm hungry, right?
right.
Similarly, like, sex and like food as an example, they're not bad things. They fuel us, they're part of our common humanity. And so I think even if people don't believe that, you heard it here, just repeat what I said. It's repeating that tape over and over and over and over again, and that's going to help rewire the brain with this too. And really, I think a great question with sex too is, what do you believe about sex? And being able to really just dive deep with that one as a journal prompt, because there could be so many things that come out, right? There could be, this is what I believe about sex for others, for me, for, religion, for this, for that. And then that, when you write that out, you can actually go back and kind of see it, if I were to write, well, I believe sex is pleasure, right? Maybe one of my values in life is pleasure. So you can go back through that exercise and highlight, like, oh, it's pleasure. Maybe it's honesty. Maybe it's about communication. Maybe it's like enjoying a bunch of different things. So then it's picking out those keywords. Maybe that's also signifying what those values might be overall. And I think it's also taking it slow with doing exercise is not even body focused right away. Like my supervisor and I were just talking about this last week, and we were talking about how it can be important for people to just focus on what's pleasurable first, right? Like, is that an essential oil? Is that burning a candle and smelling it? Is that like having a fuzzy blanket on? Is that wearing a comfortable outfit? Is that, having a plant in your home that gives you joy, gives you pleasure? Is it a specific color that you love, that you really want to just look at for that day or whatever? Like me, I love my turquoise blue. Surprise, surprise. Like that's my jam, right? So before it's even body focused, maybe just focusing on pleasure first. And then it can kind of get into maybe the different areas of intimacy, because there's 13. A lot of people will say, here's 5, here's 3, there's 13. So it doesn't have to be just sexual intimacy. It could be physical intimacy with yourself. Like when I get a good sweat on, when I'm doing Zumba, running, working out, lifting, whatever it is, like that's a physically intimate moment with my body. It feels like I'm kind of cleansing myself in a way of like, I worked so hard, I feel good, I'm proud of my body for this. And maybe that's a nice way to be able to look at the body in a different way, is to understand and be grateful for like, well, what are the things that my body allows me to do, rather than just jumping in and thinking like, okay, let me go and like have sex right now and I'll be okay and good. But then like anxiety and stress and whatever comes up, right? And then we get stuck. So, and another example of that could be creative intimacy, right? Like, do you like drawing? Do you like listening to music? Do you like being able to watch somebody do those things? Like even seeing live music or going to a concert, like taking yourself and doing that, or even just taking yourself on a date. Like that could be a different form of creative intimacy. So I think it's working backwards first, starting with pleasure and intimacy to then build up to those body pieces of it too. And I think before we even jump into the body pieces of it, it's like, what are the messages you want to tell your body as well? And what's the new narrative? And what's the new norm for you? Like, rewrite your story. You don't need to live with these shameful messages that you grew up with, and you can rewrite the story, and you have the power to change the story with it. It's a lot of work, right?
Definitely right.
hmm
On the heels of that, you touched on, but for you personally, what are your most important core values and why?
Honesty, integrity, and humor. Surprise. Honestly, I mean, like, I'm not a fake person. I have to say how I feel, and I've learned that over life. Like, use your voice. Like, speak up. I wasn't the kid in school that was always so animated and talkative or anything like that. And so that was a hard lesson I had to learn later on in graduate school of like, people want to hear from you. Use your voice, tell them how you feel, tell them what you think, because people really like that. Like, share your opinion. And the most important relationship you have is with yourself. So if you're not speaking up for you, then why would anybody else? So I think that's one of the things when we have relationships with other people. And for me as a therapist, right, like I have to be honest with clients. I'm like, I'm no good after 5 p.m. for sessions or 6 p.m. for sessions. Like, you don't want a zombie Jackie. If you want fun, bubbly Jackie, like, we will be meeting earlier in the day. Or, like, honestly, like, these times are booked. Like, I don't know when they're going to open up because therapy is like hit or miss. Like, sometimes we can plan for termination, and then you honestly never know if shit hits the fan, and then that person is going to be seeing you for longer, depending on something else or other kind of work that's coming up. So, honesty, integrity. One of the pieces that I think with that one is huge is I do sex therapy and sex coaching. Now, if a person is seeing me for sex therapy, there may be medical necessities. So I may be, assessing and diagnosing for premature ejaculation, erectile functioning, orgasm, all these different types of things like within the lovely DSM book. And if there's shame, specifically, or if there's any depression and anxiety related to this, that's sex therapy. With coaching, I use a tool and method to be able to weed people out because I'm not fucking over my license. So I want to make sure I'm being ethical with that and I'm practicing with integrity. And so because of that, if people are like, yeah, I'm not concerned about any of those like medical health things or mental health pieces when it comes to sex. I'm not experiencing anxiety or depression. I really just want to learn about my body, my pleasure, masturbation techniques, sex toys, lube pairing, right? Like really active, like let's go get the work done. And it's coaching. That is so much different where it's future oriented and present a little bit, but like more so what's the game plan? What's the play? How can I coach you? How can we do this step by step, bit by bit? Versus therapy, it's way more processy and slowing down. Coaching, it's like gather up, it's game time, right? Like this is the play for the week and this is how we're doing it. So integrity is one of my core values and humor is one of my core values. I say this in consultations with folks when they meet with me for every single service. I say, I laugh, I swear, I heal. I don't want people to be meeting with me if you're looking for a principal and feeling like, oh, I'm going to see Jackie and it's the principal's office. Like, no, you're not in the right place. You're not going to get that with me. So if you want that person, I'll refer you out. But like, I'm someone, what you see is what you get. I have to laugh. I feel like having a sense of humor is just being part of like a person and truly like my genuine authentic self, and people like that. And of course I cuss a lot with that too, and some people don't like that and some people do, and that's when they know if I'm a good fit or not. So that's definitely a clear piece as well.
I couldn't as a life coach. I weed people out. If they're asking for what I have a list of therapists I would recommend
Yeah.
or whatever have you. I don't cover those. That's
Yes.
strength in that area. So I appreciate that, and there is a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally agree with that. So I know this wasn't one of our questions, but I feel the need to ask this question.
Yeah.
Okay, would you clear up just for people to understand? What are the boundaries within sex therapy? What is a sex therapist not? Like instead of watching porn and a therapist is this. What is the sex therapist not?
Yeah. Yeah, the sex therapist is not a sex worker. So no shame on the sex work game. We need sex workers. They're fucking badass. And that's not what I do. So sex therapy, I don't have sex with my clients or anything like that. If someone were to sexualize me, I would not be working with them and I would refer them to a different type of provider as well. And sex therapy is really someone that can be able to come in and help, be it an individual, a couple, a poly couple, whatever it might be, anybody that really is just having stress over sex and help them being able to process like, what do I need? That's the simplest version. But sorry, I went backwards on that one. So what we are not. So I don't, I'm not a sex surrogate either. That's a hands-on thing where other people where it's in different states and stuff. I don't even know where at this point in time will explore like sex with clients. So that's not what I do. I don't touch my clients. I'm all telehealth and teletherapy, so that'd be pretty damn difficult if I did or wanted to give a hug or something like that, right? I'm not a sex worker. That is someone who essentially will have sex with clients, and it's for from a helping like standpoint too, so it's different types of help, but that's not what I do specifically. I'm not a um, I don't specifically have the title of sex educator. So, sex educators, that's another different route when it comes to sex therapy. And when it comes to sex therapy, we do have to do some psychoeducation though, too, especially when clients have questions or are like, Jackie, I never got, proper sex education. Like, what resources or what can you tell me about sex? Like, we do that in session, right? But I don't call myself a sex educator. I don't say that I have the training in that. So that's another piece of it too. I'm trying to think for me personally, so this one's kind of hard. So, a lot of people, when they hear the word sex therapist, they think sexual trauma therapist, which I am not. So I'm trauma informed. Of course, I have to know about trauma, learn about trauma, all that jazz, but I do not treat trauma. And one of the reasons why we think that automatically right off the bat is because in some way people can, it's kind of like a sex negative stance. Like, oh, someone will see a sex therapist because they've had sexual trauma, rather than like, oh, someone will see a sex therapist because there's desire discrepancies within the marriage. What? Or like people will twist it and say, you're going to see a sex therapist, there must be something wrong with you. Like, no, that's not it at all. So I think it's important to just kind of know and understand, depending on the sex therapist, there may be some folks that do work with sexual trauma and treat that. However, that's not what my specific training for sex therapy was in. It was in polyamory relationships, BDSM kink, assessment of all the different diagnoses I said before, really exploring a lot of sensate focus, body work, better sex or mindfulness, gender affirming care, like the list goes on and on and on. So
Yeah,
it just wasn't particular trauma. So that's one to really kind of, if anybody is looking for a sex therapist, to ask those questions in those consultations or when searching, like, do you treat this or what do you treat? Because I'm not sure, I don't understand or something like that, and they'll tell you, and then it's easy enough.
very informative. Thank you. So, uh,
Mhm.
going to ask you this, and this is the time to toot your own horn, to tell us everything. Uh, what is the best way to find, follow, and support your journey?
Yeah, so on Instagram, my handle is at Sex Therapist Jackie. My YouTube is also at Sex Therapist Jackie. I'm going to be doing more and more videos on there and growing that a little bit. Shamelesstherapy.org is my website. Check out my Shameless Self-Care Healing Shot. I'm going to be doing a lot of workshops and webinars in the future about like shame, sex, self. So make sure if you want to get some freebies, sign up for my newsletter at shamelesstherapy.org. I don't spam, I promise. It's been a hot minute since I've actually sent one of those out, but I'm definitely going to be doing more to continue this conversation going with sex, shame, and self. So definitely hop on that if you want some freebies. And sometimes I do discount codes when I feel like it to my store as well. So that's my plugs.
I cannot thank you enough for taking the time. I mean, I feel like I've just hailed from a fire hydrant. I mean, I've learned a lot just in this short time we've been talk. You're obviously incredibly well educated. I love the fact you have humor. That's right. And, and I've been to your website, outstanding website.
Oh,
Uh,
thank you.
all not following Jackie, let me encourage you to do so. You're missing out some vital information that can aspect and other aspects of your life better. Uh, and I hope we can do this. I'm a huge fan of
Mm.
So,
Thank you so much. Yes, we'll definitely have to do this again and do some more a series or something like that. See what people want.
yeah, yeah, man, the amount of information you just spilled out here in about 45 minutes is outstanding.
Mind
But
blown.
dive into many of those that would help people would be awesome. So, just a lot of respect for you.
Thank
And
you.
and um, I just want to thank everybody that's listened to this and those that will listen to it. Obviously, it's during the days before it works. That will listen to it. Give Jackie a follow. Go to her webpage and start learning, because this is very important information for all. So thank you again, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. You too. Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.